I'd really value your comment. It helps me know if the story landed and what I can do better next time. I was sitting at the kitchen table in my work shirt, laptop still warm, when she leaned back and dropped the line that shifted the room an inch to the left. Love doesn't mean you get to touch me. I'm Aaron Hayes, 38, IT systems manager in Raleigh, North Carolina. 9 years married, 2 cars out front, fridge humming. I watched her eyes remain flat after the words hit and nodded once. The kind of nod you give when a fire alarm goes off and you're not sure whether to move or wait for the drill. The quiet clicks have been happening for months. The small locks, a hug that slid into a shoulder bump, kisses that landed on my cheek while her eyes aimed somewhere past me. Bedtime became parallel scrolling. 2 screens, a widening gap. I'd offer watching something together and get a shrug that shut like a curtain. None of these things by themselves screamed crisis. Together, they were a slow rewrite of our life script. I told myself it was exhaustion, the ebb and flow of work seasons, but I was filing each moment away. She called it boundaries, the word arriving one afternoon with the tone you use when you've just learned a phrase and want to set it on the table to admire. Boundaries about time, about emotional labor, about bodily autonomy. A phrase that sounded like it belonged on a tote bag. I respect boundaries. My job runs on them. Access levels, audit trails, least privilege. So when she said, "Love doesn't mean you get to touch me," I didn't argue. I closed my laptop softly like you shut a conference room lid when a meeting tips sideways and note-taking is over. The evening kept all its mechanical motions. She took the couch with her phone while I answered 2 emails about a backup job that always overruns on Wednesdays. We didn't address the sentence, which is a kind of talking. The silence grew into a third guest sitting on the rug pretending not to listen. I offered tea and she said she wasn't in the mood. When she yawned, I offered the blanket and she pulled it over her knees without a glance. It's remarkable what the body learns. Mine learns stillness. In bed I stared at ceiling lines like old jump rope beats, 9 years of us running in quick cuts. A rental with thin walls and a busted porch light, a Saturday painting the spare room, a honeymoon hike where she gripped my wrist crossing wet rocks and laughed at my dramatic balance. Her hand used to find me at night, an anchoring touch that said we were in the same boat. I tried on every reply in my head, defensive, wounded, persuasive with book quotes about connection like a man competing in a debate he shouldn't be in, and each version ended the same. Me doing all the explaining while she listened like a subscriber who could cancel at any time. So I let the words go and the ceiling lines returned to parallel. At 3 in the morning I got up for water. The house at that hour feels like a different country, the hallway ticking, the refrigerator sighing. I stood by the sink and looked out at the backyard. Porch light off, fence silhouette crisp, neighbor's wind chime stirring. I remembered her saying last year she liked when I put my hand on her lower back while crossing a street because it meant we were moving through the world together. When did together become negotiable? When did my hand become a claim rather than comfort? Morning brought the practical brain online. Coffee brewed, lunch packed, the dog fed. She came down in workout leggings and the oversized sweatshirt she steals from my side of the closet, moving around me like furniture, avoiding eye contact with half-closed lids. My hello earned a soft. Even indifference has syntax. At the door I reached for the keys on the hook and noticed the spare set for her parents' house was gone. Maybe she'd borrowed them. Maybe nothing. That's how systems administrators think. Note the change first, judge later. Driving down Glenwood in familiar traffic, I let the night translate into usefulness. I wouldn't beg for closeness she'd recast as intrusion, and I wouldn't retaliate like a teenager. At the office I did what I do best. Observe patterns, document reality, build contingencies. I fixed the backup job and answered a vendor about a patch window, watching our marriage as if it were a status log. Warnings ignored, thresholds crossed. Around noon I caught myself starting a note titled, "Boundaries," laughed under my breath, and closed it. Quiet decisions scale better. On the drive home the rain began like a sudden southern downpour that turns brake lights into a red river, and I felt oddly calm. Not resigned, but clear. The kitchen would still smell of basil, the dog would still snore, she might be on the couch half watching a show. I would hang my keys, ask about her day like a normal man in a normal marriage, and know with a kind of certainty that straightens your posture a degree that something had ended last night, even if neither of us had signed anything. When I stepped inside she glanced up, then back to her phone. I took off my shoes, asked if she had eaten, and she shrugged. I made a simple dinner and set a plate at her elbow without comment. She took a bite without looking up. The dog thumped once and returned to being a small furnace by the oven. I ate standing at the counter, watching steam rise from the pasta and vanish. If there was a breaking point coming, I couldn't see it yet. I only knew I wasn't going toward it with my hands out, hoping to be taken. Later I brushed my teeth and caught my face in the mirror the way men do when promising themselves things they won't say aloud. No speeches, no grand gestures. The next move would be quiet and exact. I turned off the bathroom light and let the house go dark room by room, shutting it down cleanly like a server so nothing corrupts on the way. In bed I lay still and listened to the rain, marking the distance and accepting it. Morning arrived like nothing had happened, which somehow made it worse. She came downstairs in the same gray hoodie, hair in that loose knot she wears when she isn't trying. The dog circled her ankles as I poured coffee and slid the mug across. She murmured thanks into the steam and scrolled, as if last night's sentence had been a weather report. I waited for a glance, a foot nudging mine under the table, even a half joke to break the ice. Nothing. The quiet was policy, not pause. She narrated her schedule without looking up. Pilates at 11, a stop at Whole Foods, maybe happy hour with Danny, and an "if I'm socially resourced" live. The phrase landed like a new appliance on the counter. I asked if she needed the car and she said she'd Uber. She joked about boundaries with rides as if playfully. A few minutes later my phone pinged with a neon meme about consent and how men only want one thing. No caption, floating between our calendar and a dentist reminder like a small flare. I typed a reply and deleted it. The last thing I wanted was to audition for the role of defensive husband in a chat I wasn't invited to. At work my morning filled with tickets and calls. At lunch I opened a blank note and wrote, "We're not roommates," then backspaced it to nothing. I don't write for effect. I write instructions, steps to reproduce and to recover. So I focused on what mattered. What had shifted wasn't just touch or access, but the thousand small conveniences that run under life like clean code. My time on demand, my car, my passwords, my name on bills that got paid without comment. I could see the dependency tree clearly, not as leverage but as fact. If her stance was that love didn't entitle me to reach for her, the parallel formed in my head calm and inevitable. She texted around 3, "Can you grab almond milk, quinoa, and that shampoo I like?" I replied, "Sure," and added, "Anything else?" She sent a brand photo and 2 efficient, impersonal words. Walking the grocery aisles felt strange, both provider and intruder in the same hour. At checkout the clerk asked, "Paper or plastic?" And I found myself saying, "Whatever keeps things from breaking." It sounded like a joke. It wasn't. Back home she sat with a long podcast about unpaid emotional labor and paused it when I entered. Not out of respect, but like a teacher stopping a video when the principal walks in. The kitchen sink remembered nothing about our marriage. It held dishes that weren't mine and a pan with dried sauce. I rinsed what I'd used and left the rest. A small experiment. She watched and said lightly, "I'll do it later. Don't be controlling." I nodded. The pan listened. We ate separately, she on the couch with a bowl and hearts and "OMG yes" sprinkled between bites, me at the counter watching steam. When I asked about her day she gave the highlight reel. A good sweat, a great playlist, an annoying cashier who didn't understand boundaries. I asked, "Which boundaries?" And she blinked slowly, asking why I was buying wine on a Wednesday. I said, "Nothing," because any word spent defending my right to exist in a conversation was a word I might need later. After dinner she stood at the mirror touching up gloss. "Girls' night," she said. "A pre-game for nothing, which is sometimes everything." She tugged the sleeve of my sweater like I was a mannequin and tossed it back. "You don't have to wait up." I meant it when I said I didn't. She hesitated, expecting at least a protest, then left with a breezy "love you" thrown over the shoulder to keep inventory full. I didn't wait up. I cleaned my bowl, walked the dog under a bruised sky, and sat at the table with a legal pad, not to tally grievances but to map what had become automatic. The rotation of errands, the default planning, the reflexive "I got it" that had shaped itself into habit around us. I underlined nothing. I simply looked. In the margin I wrote, "Respect is an on-off switch," and circled it because some truths aren't gradual. She hovered in the doorway watching me type, arms folded like a question, the engine of her next line revving. "You're being cold," she said. "I'm being clear," I replied. "That's the same thing." It isn't. Cold is pretending not to care while undermining someone. Clarity is telling you where I end and you begin. She rolled her eyes and announced a walk as if jury duty had been called. The door closed and I exhaled. I made 10 overdue calls, an attorney consult, a credit freeze request, a small emergency fund moved into a separate account. Contingencies half built since the first little click. When she returned she glowed. The practiced shine people wear after rehearsing a position. She asked if I could pick her up Thursday because rideshare surge is insane. I said I had plans and wished her a good session. No accusation, no drama. The dog raised an eyebrow and went back to sleep. I adjusted my life without announcing it. Gym early, coffee at a place I hadn't visited in months, no texts until 9, do not disturb after 10, and I told her calm non-emergencies could wait. She called it petty. I called it sleep. Her first little test arrived fast. At lunch she sent an errands list framed as thanks, not a request, more like an order. I replied with options. I can do A and B on Saturday, or you can handle them today. She sent back a meme about weaponized incompetence. I actually laughed out loud, which I think annoyed her more than anger would have. I tapped a thumbs up and walked into my 3 o'clock. That evening she tried to reopen the romance faucet that had been rusted shut. A soft hand on my shoulder, a kiss that landed where it used to, the perfume I remembered from better trips. I didn't pull away. Respect runs both ways, or it isn't respect at all. When she felt the absence of the old automatic reward, she changed scripts mid-scene. You're punishing me. I'm mirroring you, she said. You taught me yours, I'm teaching you mine, I answered. This is financial control, she snapped. No, I said, calm. Control is unilateral and secret. Boundaries are declared and even. You keep yours, I'll keep mine. We'll see if there's a marriage in the middle. Her face flickered, disbelief, then contempt, then calculation, and she retreated to the couch in its pings. I opened a paper book so there'd be nothing for her to accuse me of reading into. The next 2 days were a pilot program in quiet reclaiming. I didn't chase, fix, or fill. If she left dishes, they stayed until morning and I used a clean pan for my breakfast. If a package arrived for her, I left it by the door unopened. If she texted at 8:59 asking a favor, I answered at 9:01 with a plan that included her doing it. Nothing cruel, nothing vague, just a man reclaiming the small, steady labor he'd handed over by habit. I also started giving information without drama, which turned out to be its own kind of power. I forwarded a tidy email labeled household coverage with bullet points. What I pay, what I no longer pay, and where she could find the logins for the things she now owned. I ended with one line. If you need clarity, ask with specifics. She didn't reply. The read receipt was enough. That night I slept like a man whose spine had finally clicked into place. The house sounded like itself again. The dog migrated to the foot of the bed and sighed that satisfied sigh that comes with predictability. In the dark I thought about how many times men talk themselves into one more compromise because it's easier than the hard conversation. I decided I was done making easy choices that kept me small. In the morning I brewed coffee and handed her a mug the way I always had. Rituals matter. She took it, puzzled by the mixture of kindness and boundary because she trained herself to see them as opposites. We stood together in the soft noises of morning. She tested once more, a light tap from the old script. So, are you going back to normal or is this the new phase? Neither, I said. This is me. If we want an us, it has to include both. She didn't have a prepared line for that. She nodded slowly, like someone reading instructions they didn't expect to need. The day moved forward and the pressure shifted. My hands felt steady on the wheel again. I reclaimed the part of me that won't apologize for being a man who expects respect in exchange for reliability. I kept her exact words beside mine and let the house learn new settings. The morning after I drew the line, she came into the kitchen in that sweatshirt she steals from my side of the closet and moved with a new softness in her voice. She brushed my shoulder reaching for a mug and held it a beat longer than necessary, then smiled like we were remembering something together. I poured coffee and slid it her way. By noon she'd pivoted to guilt. A storm of texts arrived accusing me of being transactional. Marriage isn't a spreadsheet, she wrote. I'm trying here, I answered clean. I'm not trading punishment for affection. I'm matching access to responsibility. She replied with a photo from our second apartment, a picnic blanket on the floor, a pizza box, cheap wine. We used to be easy, she wrote. I put my phone face down. Memories are postcards, not arguments. The first public crack came at the salon. She called in a whisper. My card just declined. Can you fix whatever you did? I had done nothing dramatic, only removed her authorized user status. I shouldn't have given that permission in the first place for boutique whims. Use your card, I said. Mine is for what I cover. The word cover hit her like a cold breath. Do you hear yourself? This is financial abuse. I stayed even. Abuse is secret harm. I sent you a list and a budget. You have funds. Choose. She hung up. 10 minutes later a screenshot pinged. A new charge and 3 angry emojis. Progress, I thought, and went back to the ticket queue. That night she tried seduction with the volume turned up. Candles, a dress she saves, the perfume she used to dab behind her knees. She leaned against the counter like an ad and tilted her chin at me. My chest noticed. My mind stayed where it needed to be. I closed the candle tin gently.
You said love doesn't entitle me to touch you, she reminded.
I am respecting that, I replied. I won't take what isn't offered freely, and I won't offer what's expected by habit. Fury, not sadness, was her first response. You're punishing me for setting boundaries. No, I said. I'm honoring them and mine. By the weekend, the conveniences tottered. Streaming accounts wanted new payment details. A meal kit subscription pinged her email instead of mine. Family sharing demanded her card. She held up her phone like I was a help desk. Why does everything suddenly require me? She asked. Because it's yours, I said. Ownership and responsibility traveled together. She rolled her eyes so hard it clicked. You're impossible. I'm consistent, I said and took the dog out. The group chat heated and I heard it from the living room. Pings under a show neither of us watched. Later a quieter text arrived from a number I rarely used. Liv from the chorus. Hey, I don't agree with how she's handling this. I told her so. If you need me to tell anyone else, I will. I stared at it. I had no interest in recruiting witnesses. But truth travels its own routes. Appreciated, I typed back. No need to pick sides. Just ask her to be honest with herself. She hearted it. The silence afterwards felt cleaner. Sunday dinner became the stage where others began to see the split. 2 friends came over. She made a small production of telling the budget memo story with a laugh. I let her land it, then calmly said, I sent one email that lists what I cover and what I don't. The room quieted. One friend nodded like a man recognizing a precise cut. She changed the subject with a joke that hit the floor. The next morning she circled back to blame. Do you feel like a man now? She asked from the doorway like a prosecutor. Do you feel powerful cutting off my life? I set my coffee down. I'm not cutting off your life. I'm turning off free services. You have a card, a job, a brain. Use them. She laughed a sound with no air in it. You love being the calm one, don't you? No, I said. I love being honest. I'd love being married to a partner, not a critic. That landed. She left the room and let the closed door carry the rest. Panic arrives dressed as urgency. Her midday text said the gym autopay bounced and they embarrassed her at the desk. I was on a security review call and didn't answer for an hour. Set it to your card. I wrote when I could. If you want, I'll help you budget after dinner. I don't need your budgeting lessons, she shot back, then 5 minutes later. What time? Panic is a teacher. That night she tried softness. I know I've been difficult, she said on the couch, voice threaded with old warmth. I need grace while I work through things. I looked and believed the part she believed. I have grace, I said, but grace without change is just subsidy. She flinched. I kept my hands flat on my knees. You said what you meant. So did I. The house adjusted to the new settings. She washed the dishes she'd been leaving and moved laundry without a sigh. She bought her own shampoo and didn't announce it, the ordinary act of grown-ups. Still, the steam under the lid sat there. Respect had not returned. Midweek the public mask slipped further. A neighbor in the lobby asked about the weekend and she launched into a monologue about navigating boundaries and empowerment. He glanced at me, I offered, we're learning to mean what we say. He nodded. You can tell when someone's been through your version of the scene. That night the group chat erupted and she stepped onto the balcony to take a call. I watched her through the glass, hands making the little shapes that mean, can you believe this? When she came back she said, less steel, more glass. My mom thinks I should stay with them for a bit. I nodded once. If that's what you need. She studied my face, fishing for a please she could reward or a refusal she could fight. I gave her neither. She slept on the very edge of the bed. Precise geometry of distance. In the morning she was sweetness. Thanks for being patient, she said, kissing my cheek. I know I'm not easy right now. I made 2 eggs, slid a plate toward her. She ate and cried into the yolk and said it wasn't about me. Maybe not, I thought, and that was the problem. I rinsed the pan and set it on the rack. By evening the decision had gathered like a storm when pressure finally agrees. She stood in the hallway with a small suitcase open on the bench, folding with deliberate care as if the task itself would keep her from unraveling. I might go to my parents for a few days, she said without looking at me. I clipped the dog's leash to the hook and asked if she wanted the charger in the outlet by the door. She nodded, and I wrapped the cord and tucked it into the front pocket of the suitcase.
No speeches, she said as she zipped it.
I'll go to my parents for a bit. Do what brings you peace, I answered. The dog yawned. Outside the sky was rolly gray and the floors settled under me, steady and level. I gathered the glass she'd left, rinsed it, folded the blanket back into its basket, moved shirts into the spare room. In the afternoon, I opened my email and saw the attorney's confirmation for Tuesday. I kept the appointment. I wasn't interested in court as sport. I wanted a map for whatever came next, a list of documents, a set of if-s that would turn fear into tasks. I made a folder called House and dropped in the deed copies, insurance policies, the boundary spreadsheet. I changed my emergency contact from her to my brother and felt a small click inside, a latch finding its home. Her message arrived at dusk. I'm here. Mom made tea. We're going to talk. I thumbed a take the time you need. 3 dots appeared, paused, then vanished. That too was information. The next morning the bed was still crisp on her side. I brewed coffee, put 2 mugs on the counter by habit, then slid one back into the cabinet. I took the dog to the greenway, listened to the morning choir of runners, bikes, and the river under the footbridge. On the way home I stopped at a brick building I'd passed 100 times and photographed the leasing number for a 1-bedroom with small balconies and afternoon light. I didn't sign anything. I was practicing the feeling of options. Options are quiet courage. I cooked for 1 that night. Eggs, toast, blistered tomatoes, and ate at the table with the seat across from me empty on purpose. Not a tragedy, not a threat, just the honest shape of a room. On Friday I took the ring off and set it in the dish with the keys. I walked the dog, paid utilities, and reviewed the budget that now reflected only what I agreed to carry. I looked at the line that used to be labeled Us and saw it divided correctly. I cover what I choose, she covers what she chooses. Anything in the middle is either carried together or not at all. Saturday brought one last attempt at the old game. Can we reset? Wipe the slate and try again, she messaged. I pictured the kitchen the night she'd said that line like a slogan, and how my silence had felt like dignity instead of defeat. I answered with the only slate that mattered. Yes, if respect is the baseline. If not, no. Minutes later she accused me of making it conditional. Conditions are agreements, I wrote. Manipulation is the other thing. She didn't come home Sunday. The day stretched simple and unremarkable, and I remembered how ordinary can be good. I vacuumed, fixed the pantry hinge, read 50 pages without checking my phone. In the late afternoon I drove to the river and stood on the footbridge until the light went copper and slid off the water. That night I moved fully into the spare room and slept like a man whose name was his own again. I woke before the alarm, made coffee, and stuck a sticky note inside the front door. Be clear. Be kind. Don't negotiate respect. I don't hate her. She made a choice, and so did I. Maybe she'll do the work and we'll build something honest. Maybe we won't. I can live with either. What I won't live with is being used for the parts of me that are easiest to consume while the parts that require reciprocity starve. She declared, "Love doesn't mean you get to touch me." I returned it. "Marriage doesn't mean you get to use me." In the end, she packed a suitcase and left for the safety she trusted more than us. I let her go because the only person I am responsible for carrying without question is the one signing this. Respect isn't a perk. It's the price of admission. Without it, love is a slogan on a tote bag. With it, everything else becomes possible. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments and do not forget to like, share and subscribe to the Frutti Cheats channel.